doctrine of natural rights was most prominently laid out by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence right at the beginning of the document. "We hold these truths to be self-evident," he wrote, "that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." This is probably the most famous phrase in the English language. But the words that immediately follow may be the most important. Here's what it says: "To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." Okay, what is the consent of the governed? Natural rights are inherent to your humanity and the source of your sovereignty as a free individual. If you believe in God as I do and Jefferson did, then you accept the truism that we have been created by him in his image and likeness, and just as he is perfectly free, so are we. If you believe instead that we are the product of natural evolutionary forces and not the intentional recipients of gifts from a loving supreme being, you also recognize that we own our minds and our bodies, and we have the free will to use them as we see fit. Either way, whether you choose theology or biology is the source of our rights. The birth of America in the Declaration of Independence recognized that our rights come from within us. They are not given to us by the government. You have a right to your person, to your property, and to your version of the pursuit of happiness. You also have the right to think as you wish, to say what you think, and to publish what you say. You have the right to use violence to protect yourself from anyone or anything trying to take away your rights. You have the right to privacy, to fairness from the government, the right to travel, to worship or not to worship. You have the right to keep and enjoy your earnings and your property, and you have the right to be left alone. All humans have these rights. But sometimes bad and power-hungry people will try to take these rights away. A thief in the night will use a gun or a crowbar to steal your car. A thief in the government will use the law to steal your income. You get the picture. When the Declaration of Independence talks about government receiving its just powers from the consent of the governed, it is describing the process by which we transfer a portion of our natural rights to the government, the process by which we each give away some of our freedom, some of our individual sovereignty, and thus give to the government its authority to govern. What's important to note about this process is that according to the Declaration of Independence, it is supposed to be voluntary and consensual. That's why government can only wield those powers which the individual is at liberty to wield and to give to the government. Think of it this way: you can't steal a car from your neighbor, and so your friends can't hire an agent to go out and steal from your neighbor either. And thus you and your friends cannot empower the government to do the stealing. Again, I think you get the point. Lawful government only has the powers that we once had and we lawfully gave to the government. Just as slaves had the moral and legal right to leave those enslaving them, just as the states have the moral and legal right to leave a union that violates the Constitution that binds them, so too you have the moral right to live without a government when it breaks its own laws. The federal government claims your consent through the Constitution. The Constitution is a social contract that binds the American people to their government. Did you freely consent to this? I don't know anybody who did. So since none of us consented to the Constitution, either the government stays within the confines of the Constitution, or we can ignore or change the government. This view, called the consent of the governed, was widely and openly accepted by the framers. They gave us a Constitution which defines, limits, and constrains the government. This is why adherence to the Constitution by all government is so crucial to preserving and retaining our freedoms. The Constitution formalizes the relationship between sovereign people and sovereign states and the federal government. When the Constitution is ignored, so is our sovereignty. And if we can't avoid a government to which we never gave consent and which violates the Constitutions, so will our freedoms be ignored.